truth. And you tell them that I told you, say the car when you want.
The last thing.
Brian Mutuku. Brian. Hello guys, munanisikia? Hello, it is raining heavily here. So I'm not, it is raining heavily in Juja. Munanisikia? Okay, yes, Daniel has said yes, Agnes, yes, kila mtu yes. So let us continue with the initiating a project. Initiating a project. So a project should be initiated only if certain conditions are satisfied. A project should be initiated only if certain conditions are satisfied. First of all, the stakeholders should be convinced. First of all, the stakeholders should be convinced that the project will contribute to sustainability and the competitiveness of institutions involved, and that there is necessary commitment present. A project should be initiated only if certain conditions are satisfied. First of all, the stakeholders should be convinced that the project will contribute to sustainability and competitiveness of institutions involved, and there is necessary commitment present. So if there is a sustainability that the stakeholders are convinced they will have, then a project will be initiated. Assumptions for project initiation. Assumptions for project initiation. Hello. Nitafurahi sana. Hebu akiniweke basi Monday nikikuja tu namaliza klasi ya asubuhi 7 to 9:30 hivi, alafu naingia kwenu namaliza natoka nje kabisa.
Can't hear you.
Kwa huyo mwingine, sisi tushazoeana na nyinyi tangu zamani. Jaribu tu. Okay, utaniambia. Sorry guys. So assumptions for project initiation. Before initiating a project, you should be able to answer the following questions. Are the resources necessary for completing the project available, especially human resource? Are resources necessary for completing the project available, especially the human resource? Is the probability for getting finances big enough? Will you be able to get the finances to initiate the project? Does the project contribute to achieving strategic goals of the institution? Does the project contribute to achieving strategic goals of the institution? So you should be able to have those questions, those 3 questions answered before you can do project initiation. And the project initiation is justified only after having satisfactory answers to all these questions. Project initiation is justified only after having satisfactory answers to all these and some others that you may be able to ask yourself. But later on, we'll be able to discuss about resources. There are also some general suggestions. There are also some general suggestions that before initiating the first project, one should take part as a partner in a project managed by someone else. Before initiating the first project, one should take part as a partner in a project managed by someone else. For example, if I want to start a cafeteria, then I should be able to come to the cafeteria there and hear what the other people are saying. Then I can be able to go and start mine. Before initiating a big project, you should have managed a small one first. Before initiating a big project, you should have managed a small scale project. Before initiating an international project, you should have participated in international projects. So you cannot say that you are going to start an international project and you have never even participated in any. For example, these Chinese of ours who are constructing roads everywhere. Jambi, I'm not audible. Am I audible now? Multiple users, am I audible? Yes, now I'm audible. So I was saying that you can also be able to participate in a project. You cannot start one if you have not had another one. You are not even a partner in any other project. You should be able to manage small projects before you can manage bigger ones. And if you are dealing with international projects, if you want to do the projects that Chinese are doing, then you should also be able to participate in any that they are doing so that you yourself, you can be able also to continue with any other international that might be available to you. So determination of the objective of a project. Determination of the objective of a project. So decision makers who have authority to approve projects, decision makers who have authority to approve projects often do not have enough time to go deep into details. Decision makers who have authority to approve projects often do not have enough time to go deeply into details. Therefore, the features that will be considered first, first of all, the objective of the project. You have to consider the objective of the project, and sometimes the name of the project. You should be able to consider the objective of the project, and the name of the project should be well elaborated. The name of the project should be well elaborated. And the main objective is important. The main objective is important because the whole planning of project activities the main objective is important. DNSG, I'm in class. Nikimaliza, okay. The main objective is important because the whole planning of project activities bases on project objectives. The main objective is important because the whole planning of project activities bases on project objectives. Planning should be considered as a backward process. Planning can be considered as a backward process from outcome or objectives to activities. So what this one means, that when you are saying that you are planning it from backward, you are starting from the end, and then is when you come to the objectives. Normally in project planning, we normally talk of the outcome of the project before we can be able to talk about the objectives, and then we talk about the activities that we are going to do. Therefore, the better is understanding of the goals or problems to be solved. Therefore, the better is understanding of the goals or problems to be solved, the more efficient is the planning of the project. Therefore, somebody with a problem? The better is understanding of the goals or problems to be solved, the more efficient is the planning of the project. There is an analogy with the composition of a puzzle. Knowing the picture could make the composition much easier. So if you have a picture, for example, I've given an example that if you have a picture, it's better, you'll be able to understand better that when you have, a puzzle, what it is. So you should take the following factors into account when you are determining the objective. You should be able to take some factors into account when determining the objective. And these factors that you take into account when you are determining the objective include the market needs. The market needs, you should be able to take into account an account of the market needs when you are determining the objective. For example, production of digital content. I know you know production of digital content. When you are producing the digital content, what is the market need? Then you have to look at the institutional needs. Institutional needs, for example, in educational institutions that develop new teaching tools for reducing teaching costs. The first one is the market need. For example, when you are producing the digital content, you have a market. Is there a market that needs the digital content? When you are doing educational institutions, these teaching tools that you are producing, will they be able to reduce the teaching costs? And then you should be able to consider another factor that you should be able to consider or take into account when determining the objective is the customer needs. The customer needs. The customer needs. What does the customer need? The other factor that you should be able to take into consideration when you are determining the objective, the other factor that you should be able to take into account is the technological opportunities. Technological opportunities. Then you should be able to look at the social need. The social need. Then lastly, the legislation. The legislation. So these factors should be taken into account wherever you are thinking about the project objective. So a clear objective is necessary. A clear objective is necessary, not only for decision makers, but for getting support by the project partners and for forming project team. A clear objective is necessary, not only for decision makers, but for getting support by the project partners and for forming project team. You can even have not necessarily a master's students who proposes to develop an IT model for a company. You can also have a BBIT student who can propose to develop an IT model for a company. So the objectives and its formulation. The objective and its formulation should be understandable for customers and adequate. The objective and its formulation should be understandable for customers and adequate, reflecting the most significant aspects. So it should have the most important aspects. The objective and its formulation should be understandable for customers and it should be adequate, reflecting the most significant aspects. And here what we do, we recommend that we apply the SMART principle. Here what we do, we recommend that we have the SMART principle. SMART meaning it should be simple, measurable, agreed, realistic, and timely. So it is recommended that we apply the SMART principle whenever we are having the objective and whenever we are formulating it. So the objective and its formulation should be simple. I've said the objective and its formulation should be SMART. So S stands for simple. So everybody who has basic knowledge of the area should understand what exactly the project is aiming to complete. So when it is simple, everybody who has basic knowledge of the area should understand what exactly the project is aiming to complete. Measurable, it should be simple to, should be simple also and possible to measure to what extent the project goal has been achieved. It should be possible to measure to what extent the project goal has been achieved. A, which is agreed, the outcome should meet the customers or the end users' needs. The outcome should meet the customers or end users' needs. That is, it should solve some problems. It should solve some problems. It should also be realistic. That is to say that the objective should correspond to the resources, including knowledge available. The objective should correspond to the resources, including the knowledge that is available. The last one is that the T stands for timed. It should be timed. So when we are talking about timed, is a planned duration, that is sufficient for achieving the project goal. Timed is a planned duration that is sufficient for achieving the project goal. So the SMART principles are applicable to the project's activities. The SMART principles are also applicable to the project's activities. So wherever you are thinking about objectives, then those objectives should be SMART, and the SMART will stand for simple, measurable, agreed, realistic, and timely. Anybody with a question? If there is nobody with a question, then we look at determination of sources for financing. Determination of sources for financing. Determination of sources for financing. So when we are looking at how you determine the sources for financing, you should be able to bear in mind that most of the financing institutions support certain types of projects. As most of the financing institutions support certain type of projects, only the determination of the main objective of the project and sources of financing will be made in parallel, hand by hand. So when you're looking at the sources for financing, the institutions will only be looking at the project that maybe you have the main objective. Is it smart? Will you be able maybe even to repay back the loan? Or you'll sell Kenyan so that you can be able to repay the loan. So by the financing scheme, the projects can be divided into the following three bigger groups. So as most of the financing institutions support certain type of projects, usually fixed, only the determination of the main objective of the project and sources of financing will be made in parallel, hand by hand. By the financing scheme, the projects can be divided into the following three bigger groups. The projects can be divided into the following three bigger groups. We have the in-house projects. We have the in-house projects where the resources are given according to the needs of the project and the resources available. We have the in-house projects where the resources are given according to the needs of the project and the resources that are available. And then we have projects in the framework of bigger programs. I told you that a project normally takes 3 years. A project normally takes 3 years. It has got an end period, but a program will take more than 5 years. So a program consists of so many projects. So the second one is projects in the framework of bigger programs. And here the projects are selected usually by open calls. Projects in the framework of bigger programs. And here the projects are selected usually by open calls. The project that will be financed usually will not get the amount of money that was applied for. When we are talking about projects in the framework of bigger programs, the projects that are financed here don't get the amount of money that they applied for. The project plans are form-based. The project plans are form-based. And there is usually no direct contact between the applicant and the deciding body. So when you apply for this money, you as the applicant and the body that will decide whether you are going to be given money for this project, you don't get direct contact. The third one are projects that are supposed by, projects that are supported by usually private, into brackets, private, projects that are supported by institutions according to either on basis of individual negotiation or written applications. Now, this is where the mega projects of this Kenyan government from Chinese fall. Projects that are supported by institutions according either on basis of individual negotiations or written applications. The application procedures can be very different. The application procedures can be very different. From form-based project plans up to just one-page application. So here, this is where our mega projects fall. We have individual negotiations where the president individually goes and negotiates with those other countries, or they make written applications. So the projects in the latter group, this last group that we have talked about, are usually less formalized and are based on sponsorship. The projects here that are supported by institutions are based on sponsorship. And the possibilities to find sponsors, differ a lot from country to country. Possibilities to find sponsors differ a lot from country to country. And sponsoring is widespread in some countries and almost non-existent in others. Sponsoring is widespread in some countries and almost non-existent in others. So there are some common principles for looking for sponsorship. There are some common principles for looking for sponsorship. These principles have statistical character. There are some common principles for looking for sponsorship. Kindly mute yourself. And these principles have statistical character. And they can be only partly applicable in every single case. You can look at your sponsorship from Rockefeller. Some people look for sponsorship from Rockefeller, for example. Rockefeller has been sponsoring so many projects in Kenya. And we know even they wanted, or even they are the ones who are sponsoring through Bill Gates. They are the ones who are sponsoring the vaccines in the world. Sources of grant information. Sources of grant information. And the grant information, I know you know grants that are normally extended to us. When it is a grant, you don't actually, in most cases, repay, because you're just given as a token so that you can be able to use for a project that you want. But it's very difficult to come across grants. Most countries want to give you loans so that you can be able to repay back. So analyzing sources of grant information, attention should first of all be paid to the following aspects. Analyzing sources of grant information, attention should first of all be paid to the following aspects. Priorities or actions that will be supported by this particular sponsor. So when you are analyzing the sources of grant information, your attention should first of all be paid to the following aspects: priorities or actions that will be supported by this particular sponsor, the type of institutions eligible to apply, the type of institutions that are eligible to apply, and the formal requirements. When we are talking about the formal requirements, what are the submission deadlines? What are the forms that you're going to use to get this information? So you have to look at the priorities or actions that will be supported by this particular sponsor, the type of institution that will be eligible to apply, and the requirements. So the formal requirement should be studied with care. The formal requirements should be studied with care because misunderstandings can happen. The formal requirements should be studied with care because even misunderstandings can happen. And if the misunderstandings happen, then the application can be rejected by the people you have applied for. So when you have to look at the formal requirements, you want to know what is it that you really need and what is needed so that the grant can be advanced to you. Because remember, even if you are not going to pay to repay back this grant, the institutions that are giving you that grant must be able to see that there's something that is going on so that they are satisfied with the money that they have given you. So in most cases, we look at the requirements, we look at the institutions that are giving us the money for these projects, so that in case later they come back to your country to see that whatever you asked the money for is what you have done it with, not the KEMSA style, that you are given money for COVID-19, but that money is diverted to other things. So we go to resource analysis. The resource analysis. So we can say that even the most generous support does not guarantee success of the project. Even the most generous support does not guarantee success of the project. And the objectives of the project are achieved as a result of collective work of project members. So even if you are supported, it does not guarantee that there will be success of the project. You can only achieve the objectives of the project if there is collective work done by the project members. If there is teamwork, you know very well that whenever there is teamwork, things become easier. So you can only achieve the projects of the objectives of the project if there is collective work of project members. And success will depend on their qualification. Success of the project will depend on their qualification. It will depend on how they are devoted. So there should be devotion. The work conditions, their qualification, how devoted they are, what are the working conditions, are they working under favorable conditions? And if they are working under favorable conditions, then there'll be success of the project. So before planning a project, before planning a project, a number of questions should be answered. Therefore, before planning a project, a number of questions should be answered. Do you have enough qualified people? Are enough qualified people available? Because we have said the success will depend on their qualification, their devotion, their work conditions. Therefore, before you plan a project, you should be able to know, are enough qualified people available? The problem is that a project lasts a limited period of time. I've already told you that a project will only last 3 years, and that is all, because it is a group of activities that must be completed within a specified time. And so the project team is composed on temporary basis. So are enough qualified people available? And because the project lasts a limited period of time and the project team is normally on temporary basis, the obstacles that may arise here, because they are on a temporary base, the obstacles that may arise here, a potential project member may be fully occupied by other activities. A potential project member may be occupied fully by other duties. A project or a potential project member already agreed to take part on other projects or activities. A potential project member can have already agreed to take part on other projects or activities. For example, for European Union projects, for example, for EU projects, the selection process takes several months. For example, for EU projects, the selection process takes several months, and only a small part of the projects get financials. The selection takes several months, and only a small part of the project can be financed. Take into consideration or take into account the administrative structure of the institution that is offering the resources. Take into account the administrative structure of the institution that is offering the resources. The other obstacle that may arise is necessary infrastructure available. Is necessary infrastructure available. So availability of the following resources should be analyzed. When we are saying that is necessary infrastructure available, we are asking availability of the following resources should be analyzed. The workplaces, the equipment that will include ICT tools. We are saying is necessary infrastructure available when you are doing resource analysis. And so availability of the resources should be analyzed. And what you are analyzing is the workplaces, the equipment, and this equipment must be able to include the ICT tools. Then other necessary tools can also be analyzed. That planning of resources is easier if projects will be performed by one institution. Planning of resources is easier if the project is performed by one institution. Performing by one institution means you don't have so many institutions dealing with one project. So if one institution is dealing with the project, then it means the project will be successful. The other question that you should ask yourself is that in resource analysis is, does the project initiation have necessary acceptance? Does the project initiation have necessary acceptance? Acceptance by the upper management of the institution, potential participants, and the upper management of partner institutions. Does the project initiation have necessary acceptance by the upper management of the institution, potential participants, and upper management of partner institutions? Actually, normally the projects fail because they don't have the support even of the people who will be participating in this project. And so that is why always there should be participatory projects. When people participate in the projects, even the dams could have failed maybe because the people did not participate. The government just came in that they were going to construct the dams, but they didn't involve the stakeholders. They didn't involve the people who are going to use these dams. So the project idea can be very good. I'm heading to that the project idea can be very good, but if upper management already has some other plans, or if the project does not fully comply to some political or strategical positions, then the initiation of the project would be quite risky undertaking. So the project can be very good if the upper management has other plans, or if the project is not fully complying to the political or strategical position, then the initiation could be a risky undertaking. And that is why actually most of our projects in this country are not working, because some of them are initiated without the blessings of the politicians who matter, without the blessings of the people who matter in the government. So they become risky, and so they just remain white elephants. On the other hand, if the project has a strong support by upper management, receiving additional resources can be expected in case the project should face difficulties. On the other hand, if the project has a strong support, by upper management, receiving additional resources can be expected in case the project should face difficulties. Informing the upper management reduces the risk that the project serves. Informing the upper management reduces the risks that the project serves. First of all, the interest of the project team instead of the institutions as a whole. Informing the upper management reduces the risk that the project serves. First of all, the interest of the project team instead of the institution as a whole. And one should take into account that the resource is shared by a number of projects. One should be able to take into account that the resource is shared by a number of projects, and the distributing of a critical resource will usually be made by upper management. So upper management is the one that decides which resources are to be distributed. One should also take into account that resource is shared by a number of projects, and the distributing of a critical resource is usually made by upper management. Success factors of IT projects are Someone did the analysis of the resources and found out that success factors for IT projects are executive support, user involvement, experienced project manager, clear business objectives, minimize scope, standard software infrastructure. So executive support is that the project is supported by people in the executive, people in the government, people in higher institutions which matter in any country or within an organization. User involvement, the people who are going to use those projects or those IT projects, are they involved? Is the project manager an experienced person? Does he have the expertise? Did you have clear objectives? The scope, how far can you be able to work? What is the coverage? And then the software infrastructure, the standard software infrastructure. Then you can be able to look at the firm basic requirements. You look at the firm basic requirements, the formal methodology, the success factors of IT projects. You can look at the firm basic requirements, the formal methodology, and the reliable estimates. And reliable estimates. The project's objective should be accepted by the project team. The project's objective should be accepted by the project team because this determines the extent of their devotion. So the objective should be accepted by the project team because this will be able to show how devoted they will be to the objective. In case the project receives insufficient financing, will there be necessary compensation opportunities? In case you are receiving insufficient financing, will there be necessary compensation opportunities? Often, the project can receive less finances than needed for achieving the goals. Relatively, often the project will receive less finances than needed for achieving the goals. Then one or more of the following scenarios can be applied. So if you receive less finances than you need for achieving the goals, then there will be one or more of these scenarios. The scope of the project can be reduced. So if you receive less finances, then ensure that the area you are going to cover is reduced. Also ensure that some of the activities of the project are merged with some others. And also the budget structure should be changed. So in most cases, when project managers receive less funding, then they reduce the coverage. If you are to start from the airport up to Westlands, then you will reach somewhere on Mombasa Road and stop there. Some activities can be merged. The budget should be changed so that because you have already reduced the area and you have seen that the finances are less. Anybody with a query? Anybody who has a query? We move to the project charter. We move to the project charter. If a project will not be financed, then the time used for preparing a project plan is wasted. Imagine you have prepared a project plan and then you are not financed. Then that is wastage. But even if a project will be financed, then usually the costs for preparation of the project should be covered by other sources. If a project will not be financed, then the time used for preparing a project plan is wasted. But even if a project will be financed, then usually the costs for preparation of the project should be covered by other sources. Therefore, initiation, that is project initiation, should be motivated for both the partners and for upper management. Therefore, initiation should be motivated for both the partners and for upper management. So for describing the general idea of the project, then a project charter is composed. For describing the general idea of the project, then a project charter is composed. And the project charter usually has 1 to 2 pages and has its purpose. The project charter usually has 1 to 2 pages and it has its purpose. You should be able to get from decision makers approval for initiating or participating in the project. In the charter, you should be able to get from decision makers, usually the upper management, approval for initiating or participating in the project. Agree with the partners about the basic characteristics of the project. Agree with the partners about the basic characteristics of the project. And the basic characteristics are the objectives, the need, the duration, estimation of resources needed, and many more. Propose basic activities of partners. Propose basic activities of partners. That is the tasks and work division for preparation of project plan or for running the project. The project charter has the preliminary title. When we are talking about the project charter, what we are saying is like a document that you can be able to prepare. For example, when you are preparing a proposal, we talked that in research methods. When you are preparing a proposal, you have the preliminary title, you have objectives. But now in a project charter, you have to have the preliminary title, you have to have the objectives, you have to explain the need of the project, you have to have the basic strategy that you will use to achieve the project goals. You have to have a section on the project team or partners. You will have to have a section on the resources needed and how they will be available, and then the duration of the project. So the charter should have the preliminary title, the objective, explanation of the need, the strategy for achieving the project goals, the project team or the partners, the resources that you will need and how they will be available, and then the duration. Other elements that the charter should have is that it should identify constraints on time, money, quality, and other resource use. The other things that you should have on the charter is that you should identify the constraints on time, money, quality, and other resource use. You should also identify relevant customer or supplier standards or statements of best practices. Identify relevant customer or supplier standards. It should also have to consider how the finished product can be brought into use, and then identify the training needs for user personnel. Identify the needs for user personnel.
Hakuna kitu. Bwana ungesoma kwa bwana kile mbele ile ndio kwa mbele sana ni kwa pale hivi kile ugate akubekerera hapo. Oh, okay, yenda kuruhusia leo kwa roho ya Maria kwa ntiba sawa sawa. Haya.
So the project charter may also include some other elements, that the constraints on time, money, quality, and other resources. Identify relevant customer or supplier standards, how finished products will be brought into use, and also you identify the training needs. Composition of project team or consortium. Composition of project team or consortium. Composition of project team or consortium. Selection of project partners is almost as decisive for success as selection of a wife or a husband. Hebu mkacheke kidogo. Mumenyamaza sana. So when you are selecting a project team, is like when you are selecting your girlfriend or you are selecting your boyfriend. Of course, you have to know someone who will be able to help you. So the team should also be ready to help you. So choosing partners, there are some general principles that are reasonable to follow. For choosing partners or for choosing the project consortium or team, there are principles that you should be able to follow. The partner should be motivated. They should be motivated. So motivated partners are interested in achieving the project goals. The partners should be motivated. And when people are motivated, they'll be interested in achieving the project goals. You should have partners who already have experience in running similar projects. So they should be able to be experts in the project that you are carrying out. So choose a project team or a consortium that already has experience in running similar projects. The leading institutions or persons are preferred as partners. The leading institutions, the institutions that are going to carry out the project. So they are normally preferred as partners. It is also wise to prefer partners with whom you already have good cooperation with. It is wise to prefer partners with whom there is already good cooperation, so that the strengths and weaknesses of such partners are already known and they can be taken into account. So have partners who already you have had cooperation with, because you already know their strengths and weaknesses. That is just that when you're choosing a project team or a consortium, just have partners whom you already know, just that. It is also important that the interest of a single partner should not dominate over the project objective. Like now the Chinese, it's like they really want to dominate all the projects that are in this country. So that is why we are saying it is important that the interest of a single partner should not dominate the project's objectives. So have a team that does not dominate over the project's objective. Number 6, the partners should complement each other. The partners should complement each other. They should be of different experience, competency, and approach. The partners should complement each other. That means they should have different experience, competency, and approach. So they should be of diversified approach. You should have a diversification of the project team. And the partners should accept the conditions set by the donors. The partners should accept the conditions that are set by the donors. So, depending on the type of projects, additional principles can be applied. Depending on the type of project, then you can apply other additional principles that you want to use to bring into place. For example, have energetic project planners. Have energetic project planners. Anybody with a question? So in short, initiating a project is one of the steps or the stages in the project cycle. And if initiating is one of the steps in the project cycle, what we are saying is that you want to put the project team into place. You've already considered which team you want to put in place. You want to have resources. Who are going to give you the resources, and how are you going to put the resources in place? What kind of objectives that you want to bring into place? You want to have smart objectives for your project. You want a project that will be able to succeed. you want a project that you'll be able to complete. And if you want a project that you will be able to complete, then you should be able to look at the coverage. What size of a project that you want to do? Do you want to have a very large project that you might not be able to complete? What kind of partners do you want to bring in place? Do you want to bring Chinese who want even that when they are working, they should be able to bring their own people to work in the country? So such are the things that you should be able to think about when you are dealing with project initiation. So that when you are planning, plan for the success of a project. Don't plan to fail. So our next lesson will be on planning a project. Our next lesson will be on planning a project. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody who has a query? On initiating a project. So is Agnes in class? Is Agnes still in class? Agnes and Njambi? Esther?
Yes, I'm here.
That is Agnes or Njambi?
Agnes.
Njambi? Esther? She has left. So, by the end of this lesson that we have done on initiating a project, can you be able to define, identify, explain, describe, and discuss the following? Can you be able to define, identify, explain, describe, and discuss the following? Assumptions for project initiation. Assumptions for project initiation. How do you determine the objectives of a project? The resource analysis. The project charter. The composition of the project consortium or the project team. So wherever you see project consortium, that is the project team. What do you look for when you want to have that team? What did we say we must be able to have in the project charter? When we are analyzing the resources, especially the human resource, what are we really looking for? How do we determine the objectives of a project? And what are the assumptions of project initiation? So Agnes,
Yes.
see you next week in class, physical class.
Yeah.
This class is supposed to have 71 members,
Okay.
and I can only see 38. So 33 are away. Wambie, I
Yes.
will download the attendance to class
Okay.
next week. Sawa sawa.
Yes.
And so by so doing, thank you. See you next week.
See you too.